This is a female character. And this is Super Smash Bros. Now this is a female character in Super Smash Bros. These are the two female characters I play as the most, alongside Samus. Not quite mains, but still go-tos. However, this isn't about female characters in Smash, it's about female characters not in Smash, but could be. On one hand, looking for female fighters specifically is inherently silly. A character being male or female isn't important so long as the moveset is enjoyable to use and to fight against. But this was a surprisingly fruitful endeavor. Since most of the obvious choices for a female fighter are already in Smash, it immediately draws in less typical picks than your Bandana Ds or your Crash Bandicoots. So after gathering a rather massive list, I began trimming it down to just 20 characters. Characters who didn't make this cut and why are at the end of the video. I'll also go over any individual move ideas for a fighter if I have any, but this means that some characters will have shorter sections than others. And finally, this list is grouped and ordered by franchise, not preference nor popularity. But enough preamble, on to what you clicked on the video for. Definitely an odd choice, but that's the exact reason why. WarioWare follows a bunch of people with, on paper, down-to-earth lives and jobs, but with the most absurd things happening during their day-to-day activities. Mona is the perfect choice to represent that, as she's seemingly the most normal of all of them, but is low-key the biggest weirdo. In fact, in the very first game, her microgames are meant to be the offbeat ones that don't fit anywhere else and are just plain weird. What also helps Mona is the variety of jobs and hobbies she's held throughout the games. From food service, to delivery, to cheerleading, to reporting. Mona's various jobs would make her an excellent prop fighter. Her cheerleading days would make for good aerials, her moped would certainly mimic Wario's bike. Fitting, given how she admires his hustle and wishes to be a treasure hunter one day. And her less talked about hobbies, like playing a bass guitar, could help fill out some special moves. The bass guitar in question giving her a reflector move with longer range than usual, but a delay between uses. Also, how broken or worthless would healing on command be? Since food service is her most regularly reoccurring job, the idea of serving food is something I'd like to incorporate into her moveset. The idea is that the longer the player goes without serving food through her clouch, the more food she would drop from it. It would always drop a soft drink that heals a measly 1.2 damage, every 10 seconds adding another food item to the order. First fries, then a burger, then pizza, and finally ice cream. But I'm still not sure how good or bad of an idea this would be. Just some food for thought. It's a shame nothing from Hyrule Warriors was used in Smash Ultimate. Most of the artwork from that game would have made great evolutions for the classic spirits, and the OST was comprised of high-quality remixes already designed with combat in mind. It's also a shame Linkle hasn't been used in any game since then. Not necessarily in the sense of having a female Link be playable, I can understand why they never went for that. But the idea of having both an NPC who is named after the hero of time, and who specializes in archery would be really useful for the series. Shame the dev team seems to think that what built their legacy is worthless in the modern age, so rip Linkle's chances, I guess. Well, putting aside my salt for a moment, Linkle in Hyrule Warriors was armed with a special set of boots as an optional weapon, combining the steel boots with the Pegasus boots from Ocarina of Time, and ideally would be part of her Smash moveset. These boots would give Linkle access to a lot of different melee attacks, as well as some recovery moves with Cuckoos that were available in Hyrule Warriors. However, I would not be giving Linkle her dual crossbows, opting instead to give her the crossbow from Link's crossbow training. The crossbow itself was already the inspiration for her dual crossbows, but it would be easier to balance around Smash. The main benefit of the crossbow is multiple arrow types and different modes of fire, using down B to select the arrow type, and being able to choose between single shot, triple shot, rapid fire, literal fire, ice, shock, and bomb arrows. Instead of each arrow type recharging independently, Linkle would have the item meter from A Link Between Worlds to limit her use, with stronger arrows like the bomb or elemental arrows draining it noticeably faster.
Yes? We will triumph!
A lot of people say Fire Emblem is overrepresented, but I disagree. It just got lucky with its releases, as Corrin and Byleth's games coincided with Smash 4 and Ultimate's DLC cycles, and both Lucina and Chrom were bonus variants that could be added with very little manpower. Combine that with a rotating cast of characters for each Fire Emblem game, and it's easy to see how this series ended up with one of the bigger rosters in Smash. Enter Anna, a series regular appearing in all but one of the entries, and that very same entry's remake, in some way, shape, or form. She's to Fire Emblem what Patches is to Soulsborne, although Anna is usually more prominent and not someone you'll want to stab. And nowhere is that first part more true than the mobile game, Fire Emblem Heroes, where she's the mentor and commander of the players. It also gives her a one-handed axe, allowing for some of the simpler movesets from the early Fire Emblem characters without just copying Martha or Ike. The big gimmick I'd give her, though, is money. Being a merchant is Anna's most reoccurring role, and in Heroes specifically, she's constantly looking for a side hustle to raise funds for the player's army. And in Heroes specifically, she's constantly looking for a side hustle to raise capital for the player's army. So I say have enemies drop coins if enough damage is dealt to them for Anna to collect. Pressing B would let her open a menu, a la the hero, to buy items. Only one item can be bought at a time, and it would become her new standard special until it's used up. My three main ideas are a mine from the earlier games, which would just be a pitfall seed with poison effects, her sword from Awakening to give her Marth's shield buster, and a bow and arrow for ranged combat. Once an item is used up, out of ammo, or breaks, she can then buy a new one, if she has the money. And also, just having a lighthearted and jovial character from Fire Emblem be playable would be a nice change of pace, especially after Lucina got the short end of the stick in Smash. Out of all the characters in the Kirby series, Suzie is one of the best choices to add, especially if we're not getting Bandana D for whatever reason. To be fair, Smash Bros. Is basically Kirby gameplay turned into a simple fighting game, so most of the Kirby characters could transfer over. Sakurai just doesn't want to over-represent his own series. But Suzie would be a good choice for a one-off character to be brought into Smash. She has a laser gun, which in and of itself can have elemental variations, a personal propeller drone for recovery, and a chargeable fan charge move for a side special. That may seem a bit too simple, but I don't think the Kirby fighters should be complicated, and Suzie would be a distinct yet straightforward fighter. The Octolings, whose default outfits would be based on Agent 8, would be similar to the Inklings through recovery moves, and likely share several aerial attacks. But there are several ways to differentiate the two fighters, using chargers, aka the snipers, for neutral special, using the Octo Brush for a looping neutral standard, swapping the splat bombs for ink mines for the down special, moving the slosher to the side special, so on and so forth. There's no shortage of weapons from Splatoon to distinguish the Octoling from the Inkling, similar to how Mario and Luigi play pretty differently these days. The Octoling would have a male version too, as the Inkling does, but it is largely the female version that's used in the marketing, and would be the default option for Smash. Now, to be fair, I would include the Octoling on this list even if that wasn't true. One of the rules I made for this list is that avatar characters are fair game, so long as at least 4 of the alts would be female versions. But the Octoling is the only avatar character who actually made it onto the final list.
Britney, tak czułaj.
Ah, Britney. She's like Louis, but not a satanic terrorist. I could see people wanting Pikmin Man from Pikmin 4 as an Echo Fighter to Olimar, if for no other reason than to make use of the ice and spooky Pikmin, but I'm going with Britney for the simpler change of using exclusively rock Pikmin, minus the flying Pikmin for recovery, who would be unable to grab onto enemies but have better knockback and damage than the non-purple Pikmin. Rock Pikmin could also be able to withstand physical attacks, but would die instantly to any given projectile. This next part wouldn't line up one-to-one with the games, but Rock Pikmin could be a bit heavier to carry with the Flying Pikmin. Granted, since most people throw away their Pikmin when they want to recover, I don't even know if this would actually factor in. What would match up really well with the games is allowing Britney to recover slightly more health from eating fruits specifically. This would serve no practical purpose beyond being a nice attention to detail.
Roller ho Suzie! Kiaka Kyo! Touch wings mek Joshut Kuso!
The biggest thing that kept Crystal on the fence for me is which version to base her on. Adventures or Assault. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate shows Adventures, and so shall I. And from there, her core moveset becomes pretty self-explanatory. The staff's combat style in Adventures is more martial arts bow staff inspired compared to a spear or lance fighter. The fireball projectile can be a neutral special that could be aimed if the button was held down, perhaps even given the ability to be charged up, uniquely for Smash Bros. The frost attack is an easy side B, the rocket lift is an obvious recovery move, and the quake attack can be a very powerful down special. I wasn't able to get any direct quote for this part, but apparently, Sakura was considering adding Crystal to Brawl towards the end of development, but didn't have any character rigs that could be used for her, resulting in Wolf's inclusion instead. Personally, I'm expecting her to be the next assist trophy promoted to playable. I have no strong opinion on this character, nor the slightest idea of how she could play, and that's actually why I'd be interested in seeing her inclusion, especially in comparison to Min Min. Twintel falls into the same category of 2B for me. I hear a lot about them, but I'm never given a strong idea of what people like about them, character or gameplay-wise, so the idea of them being playable in Smash intrigues me. Especially since Smash isn't going to be getting any original characters in the roster anytime soon, fighters like this who are pretty foreign to me are the closest I'm ever going to get in the series to an original fighter. There are two other reasons I'd like to see Twintel though. The first is that of all the ARMS reps, having one of the atypical characters, those whose character build doesn't follow in the Springman or Ribbon Girl mold, would have a more unique moveset to offer. And it's hard to get any more atypical than an ARMS fighter who doesn't use their arms to fight. The other reason? Twintel is apparently considered top tier in ARMS, with both her and Min Min being considered an A+ tier fighter by the end of the game's post-launch development. And I just really like the idea that ARMS is represented not by its mascot, but two of its most competitively viable fighters.
Oh, this is just perfect. Nice!
Sammy from Advanced Wars is based on maximizing the use of infantry, and she herself shares a similar build to the Riflemen to emphasize this. Using her as a stand-in for the infantry soldiers in Advanced Wars would work fine, and could even be the grounds for basing her alternate costumes on the various armies in the series. On the downside, this would limit Sammy to the use of a machine gun and a bazooka, as those are the only two units in Advanced Wars that don't need vehicles. However, in the console spin-off Battalion Wars, veteran units were added with special weapons. This can justify giving Sammy a flamethrower for damage over time, an anti-air missile launcher for air coverage, and giving her both lighter ARs and heavier machine guns. The one angle I can't come up with for something is recovery, which is admittedly a pretty big deal in Smash. Aside from an RC transport copter as a one-to-one of Snake's recovery, or just letting her fire a shotgun down to blast jump upwards, I got nothing. But even without a satisfactory recovery option in mind, Sammy is my vote for the best choice of a military fighter in Smash Bros. It's a shame Snake doesn't get new codec conversations anymore, as it'd be really interesting to see what he has to say about the Advanced Wars cast.
Keep on pushing forward. Highly motivated. They try to say I'm overrated. If you from where I'm from, you're not supposed to make it.
I'll show you the power of my kung fu.
Too many people in my corner, so I gotta make it. I'm in it for the love of women, spot of all the
Never mind the gimmick of this list for a moment. ChunLi is one of the most heavily requested fighting game characters to join Smash Bros., and it's largely agreed upon that she should be the next Street Fighter inclusion. I'd say most of her moveset is pretty self-evident. Her lightning kicks as a looping neutral standard, her fireball as a neutral special, her spinning bird kick as a side special. Most of that is stuff you could just figure out by looking at her gameplay. My unique idea would be for the down special, making it the guard parry, or the red parry from Street Fighter 3. Successfully performing this move will cause ChunLi to not take damage and instantly be ready for a counterattack. And if she was hit by a move that would have had good knockback or damage, the opponent is slowed down, as if ChunLi had picked up a pocket watch item. The red parry would work on projectiles, but would never activate the slowdown feature. But while I was making this section, I got curious if there was a better Street Fighter 2 representative. Not in terms of moveset, since no one fights like her, but seeing if maybe the fandom had a character they preferred. After all, maybe the idea that she was the obvious choice for the next Street Fighter was just convenience bias. And if Capcom's own polling from Street Fighter V's lifespan still holds up, no it wasn't. ChunLi falls just short of the top 5 at 6th place, but outranks everyone else from Street Fighter 2, and outranking 103 characters from a decades-long franchise is no small feat. While I'm not blind to the fact that these rankings could very well change if the poll was redone today, I'm confident in saying that her popularity is not simply coasting on the legacy of being an OG fighter. And frankly, if ChunLi is considered so important to Street Fighter that even Street Fighter 3, which deliberately wanted to move away from the original cast, eventually brought her back, it's safe to say she deserves a spot in Smash. But speaking of that popularity poll, I decided to look over it to see if there were any other less obvious Street Fighter choices that ranked pretty high. And that's when I saw the winner.
Pleased to meet you.
Let's go!
Huh. I would have never guessed that. I mean, she's easily one of my favorites too, but really? I didn't think she'd outrank Ken and Akuma, much less the entire franchise. But if I don't have to justify adding her to Smash over Akuma, no complaints from me. Moveset-wise, the major difference I'd go for Sakura compared to Ryu and Ken would be her down special. Instead of a focus attack or the red guard, she would use a V skill, specifically the Haru Hayate, a forward combat roll followed by a rising knee jump that would be used to launch opponents a modest distance upwards, not quite as high as the Shoryuken. After landing the attack, the player can press B again to kick the opponent away to make some distance, or press A to smash them into the ground quickly for some damage. This actually combines both of her V skills into one move. And speaking of V moves, I'd use her V trigger variations for her true inputs. Sakura's other changes would be the Shoryuken and the Hadouken. The former would have a sweet spot halfway up, where it hits the hardest, but is noticeably weaker otherwise. Similarly, her Hadoukens are already slower and weaker than the other two in Street Fighter proper, but they hit twice and can be aimed upwards. For Smash Bros., when Sakura is in the air, she would be able to aim them down as well, something normally only Akuma can do, and Sakura would also have access to Dan's one-handed Hadouken as a mix-up. It's stronger and a bit faster, but with noticeably worse range. That last one would be true command input exclusive. Performing the Hadouken input with the special attack button would be Sakura's normal Hadouken, while with the standard attack button it would be Dan's instead. And for her final smash, she performs the Raging Demon attack, something that she can do in the various spin-off games. She wouldn't need to turn into Dark Sakura, especially since that would ideally be a costume. And performing the move causes Sakura petals instead of a kanji of some kind to appear. This is because Sakura, even when using assassin moves, has no intention nor desire to kill. Sakura is Sakura, no matter what. That's why she's number 1.
Aren't you the girl who's being chased by that dog?
Shut up! I don't want to hear about that! Do you know what you've done?
Okay, back to something that's easier to explain. As Marvel vs. Capcom 3 showed, Tron Bon's mech is versatile enough to work in a fighting game, being able to use weapons beyond its home series. The mech itself wouldn't be quite as large as, let's say, Ridley's, so size is not an issue. It can use the tank form for its dash, the hover form for its recovery, and Tron Bon herself can still use the cannon as a handgun. All of this is before you have to apply any serve bots, which, at the bare minimum, would be applied to Lunch Rush, which would certainly be the final Smash. So, yeah, just reference Marvel vs. Capcom and apply that to Smash.
I wish I hadn't needed your help, Sonic, but thank you. By the way, you seem to look less... spiky.
When it comes to Super Smash Bros., I don't think Shadow the Hedgehog would actually be a clone of Sonic, or at least not a full-on Echo Fighter. He could still end up being a semi-clone or a pseudo-clone, but just as Sonic pulls most of his moveset from Sonic the Fighters, Shadow would likely have more moves pulled from his standalone game and Sonic 2006. Using Chaos Control as a teleporting recovery move instead of a spring immediately comes to mind. I'm not confident enough to say that his neutral special is pulling out a Glock, but if Joker and Kirby can have a gun, I'm not ruling it out either. Enter Blaze the Cat from Sonic Rush, the game that predates the modern Sonic boost formula. In Sonic Rush, Blaze had her own versions of all of Sonic's special attacks, with hers being based on fire, in case her name didn't give that away. She even has an equivalent to Going Super, Burning Blaze, using the Soul Emeralds. Her Dimensions version of the Chaos Emeralds. Oh, right, she's an alternate dimension version of Sonic who's bad at opening up to people. Yes, the joke is that the Ice Queen has fire powers. But while Blaze does have her own versions of all of Sonic's abilities, they're also all animated pretty differently, which is the biggest thing hurting her joining Smash. But of all the characters in the Sonic series, I think she's the one most overdue for just a proper good appearance in something. And going back to her home series instead of whatever the hell Sonic 06 was trying to do, would be greatly appreciated. If Tifa joins Smash Bros., my friend Artie is gonna have a nosebleed, because Final Fantasy VII getting a third representative will give him an aneurysm. And to be fair, it's gotta be a bit annoying. Final Fantasy is much larger than just one game. It'd be like if Fire Emblem only had 3 characters, and they were all from Awakening. And wouldn't Terra from Final Fantasy VI be a good choice for a female Final Fantasy fighter?
Yes.
Well, for Terra, what hurt her chances is that Joker is in Smash, and the ability to turn into a more powerful version of oneself works really well with Persona as a series, and would be better off served going to one of those characters. But getting back to Tifa, you already have both Cloud and Sephiroth to represent the hero and villain of any given Final Fantasy game, so it would make sense for the next edition to be a party member. Tifa is from the same game, meaning she has a history with the 2 reps. She might be the most famous party member in the franchise, she straight up takes over as party leader for certain story sections, and she has a unique gameplay style of being a monk class. This also translates to gameplay potential, as Tifa's limit breaks aren't like the rest. Technically, they're all a continuing combo. This could lead to the individual moves being used both for special moves and smash attacks. It could mean that Tifa uses claws and knuckles until her limit gauge fills up. It could mean that her limit break has all 7 parts of the combo, but each part has to be unlocked through the match. It could just mean her limit break is saved for her final smash, and Tifa is otherwise a straightforward brawler, something that Smash Bros. Seldom gets these days. Sure, another Final Fantasy VII character could be seen as overkill, and Tifa is probably the most painfully obvious option that could be added in that regard. But I'd also see it as making the most of a rough situation. If Final Fantasy's legality has that much red tape to it, you may as well squeeze what you can get out of a single game.
My Shirandori.
たっぷり味わってね。
Sakurai has had a lot of trouble with the Japanese censorship rules, and Mai is easily one of the most ridiculous cases. Sakurai wasn't willing to compromise on Mai, so she got omitted from the KOF stage. The answer for Mai lies in Mithra. When Smash Ultimate launched, her spirit had a different design. This became a canon costume in Xenoblade during the first year anniversary update, giving Mithra an alternate version with a higher crit chance when equipped. Then, when Mithra was added as a fighter alongside Pyra, this alternate costume was used instead of her default one. So, give Mai a casual outfit or even a workout outfit specifically for Smash Brothers that the King of Fighters series can then use as an alternate costume for Mai. And since KOF is still relatively new to alternate costumes, they'd certainly benefit from a new one. Okay, now I can finally talk about how she'll play.
That's it?
No.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Once more putting the gimmick of this video aside, there's a good argument for all 4 of the classic-era protagonists to be playable in Smash. And one idea I've seen floating around is to take the hero approach, with all 4 being playable and each receiving a separate alternate costume. I actually like that idea, but I'm going with Jill specifically to represent Resident Evil. Part of this is because Chris and Nemesis have already been cemented as the modern Capcom vs. representatives for Resident Evil, and I'd wager some good money that Leon's not too far off from joining them. And secondly, Jill has her agile movesets from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that would really complement a platform fighter like Smash Brothers, along with the combat knife from the main series. Her charging stars moves from the Versus games could easily be reworked into a recovery move similar to Fox and Falco's, her side special being the grenade launcher, armed with the standard explosive rounds. With it being based on her RE3 break action launcher, it reloads between every shot. Her standard special is the handgun, which fires fast but needs to be reloaded every 15 shots. This would be done the same way an Inkling reloads on Ink. Her down special would be her big gimmick, Inventory. This would show her inventory, featuring 3 alternate grenade types and 3 items to replace the handgun, the standard grenades in the handgun replacing whatever she picks. However, just like Banjo's Wonder Wing, these powered-up options have very limited uses per stock. Should they be used up, Jill will by default switch back to the standard option. It'd be the best way to work in the item management from the classic Resident Evil to Smash Brothers, without having to make her scramble across the arena to find any items that she needs. So, why include Talum instead of Ivy, or even Sophidia? Simple. Talum is my favorite Soul Calibur character, and it's no deeper than that. With every other choice on this list, while I do like the character, I also wanted a concrete reason beyond personal preference to add them. But for Talum, I just like the character. I like her fighting style. It's a nice mix between sword fighters and brawlers, and there's really not many video game characters who can fit this mold. But, okay, I do have some moveset ideas. First, don't use the 8-way directional input from Kazuya. True inputs are fine, but leave that gimmick to Kazuya, or better off just leave it in the trash. Now for what Talum actually would use, the big idea I have is the down special, Soul Charge from Soul Calibur 2. This increases the damage to shields for all of her attacks. The duration would be equal to how long she charges, but she'll lose the charge faster if she starts blocking, and it takes longer and longer to charge each time she does it if she doesn't take a break between using the move. Pressing down special again when she still has charge would perform a slow but unblockable attack that deals a lot of damage. And the rest of her techniques, both normal and special, can be the more precise combos and techniques from the various games. I was never good enough to pull them off anyway.
Welcome to Cooking Mama Cook Star. Let's get cooking.
2 things. First, yes, my main idea with this character is just seeing how a chef would be adapted into Super Smash Bros. Second, yes, 5 volts from WarioWare would absolutely be fine for this, and I would absolutely be fine with that. But for Cooking Mama specifically, she's the poster child, mother, of a special kind of game that doesn't really exist anymore. Games that were never polished enough to be cult classics like the Shantae series eventually became, but were clearly not just shovelware either. This tier of games, the B games, video game equivalent to B movies, sadly evaporated over time as gaming got more expensive on the corporate level, while the barrier to entry for indies only got lower and lower. Cooking Mama is just a good representative to this lost era of gaming, and was a face of the Nintendo Wii. Odds are if you had that or a Nintendo DS, you've seen or even played one of the many games this character appeared in. Base her on the classic design. Put her in waist-high tights and staple the dress shut if you gotta. But that design is Kasumi. Okay, now that I've avoided a repeat of Mai, how should Kasumi play? Well, Kasumi is meant to be the face of Dead or Alive, as she was designed to appear soft for the series, which itself is meant to represent the softer and lighter nature of Dead or Alive versus Ninja Gaiden. She's since appeared in both Ninja Gaiden and the Warrior series, among many other crossovers. Like a lot of crossovers. Like literally everything but King of Fighters. But those first 3 series offer the missing nin a golden chance to be a proper stance fighter. Stance fighters are characters whose movesets partially or completely change based on, well, their stance. Transformation characters like Pokemon Trainer or Pyra and Mithra are similar to this concept, but Kasumi would be a more traditional example. Give Kasumi a sword, but have it be sheathed by default. When the sword is put away, she fights like she does in the Dead or Alive games. When the sword is out, she uses more moves from Ninja Gaiden and the Warrior series. Whether or not she wields the sword can be based on her special moves, like her recovery being a move that always draws it out, and her down special being a counter that always puts it away. Or it could just be tied to taunts to give them a more practical purpose in battle. But either way, the missing shinobi has a lot more than fan service to offer a crossover. Right about now, I would preview what would be the 20th and final character on the list. But let's make the last one a bit of a build-up. When I decided to do this list, I knew a character from Overwatch was going to make the final cut. I probably would have gone with one of its ladies even if it wasn't a restricted list in the first place. Now, since Overwatch is another one of those multiplayer games without a single true main character, even if there is a de facto mascot, I figured I'd just pick my favorite, make a joke or two, justify my choice, and move on. In fact, Kasumi was originally going to come after this to close out the video, but I chose to reevaluate the cast to see if there was someone better, like I did for ChunLi. Disqualifying anyone who debuted in Overwatch 2 right out of the gate, I had 8 contenders for this specific list that I dwindled down one by one. First to go was Widowmaker, as I just couldn't come up with a sniper moveset for Smash Bros. 7th place was Sombra, as stealth abilities in a platform fighter are better off with items than fighters. 6th place went to Zarya, and unfortunately for her, there was another fighter that she was never going to win against. Yeah, having a similar fighting style to arguably the face of class shooters was never going to end well. 5th place went to Mercy. She also had the downside of going up against the medic from TF2, but her Angel Wings did give her a mobility advantage for a moveset. But in the end, both Mercy and the TF2 medic would make better assist trophies than fighters. Making it well into the top 5, but falling just short of the bronze medal is Tracer at 4th place. Her mobility and weak but reliable automatic weaponry could be fun in a platform fighter, and it gives her an edge over Scout in terms of balance. But her main gimmick of rewinding time sounds like the antithesis of balance in a fighting game, potentially giving her the ability to undo an entire combo's worth of damage on command. And without that time manipulation, she's just a fast character with machine pistols. 3rd place is D.Va. The idea of her core gameplay is cool in Smash. Play as a giant mech, it eventually breaks, and then you play as D.Va for a short time, just like in Overwatch proper. But D.Va herself wouldn't have the strongest set of use cases, and would likely just come off as a worse Zero-Suit Samus, while the mech would likely be way too bulky to ever be useful, given that Ganondorf is smaller, would probably be faster, and still struggles. Plus, the main appeal of a heavyweight is being tanky, but what good is a tanky fighter in Smash if you become a lightweight after tanking too much damage and would be at your most vulnerable position. Second place, and at one point even the winner, was Pharaoh. She already leaned more into air combat than the others, and was an explosives expert to boot, so she'd go well for a platform fighter and be something a bit different. But then I thought, maybe Smash Bros. Doesn't have an explosive expert for a reason, and unfortunately for her, the Demo Man exists. And he's the best option for a playable TF2 character in Smash. A bigger emphasis on melee combat, a charge attack for easy side specials, and having inaccurate explosive fire without a free jetpack just makes him a more balanced option. So in the end, there can be only one, and wouldn't you know, it was my first choice anyway.
We're still in the middle of this massive ice storm. It's crazy. We missed our resupply window, and we're low on rations. So, Captain Opara is having the team hibernate.
Hey, you're holding up that time.
Sorry. Bye.
I have a bad feeling about this for some reason. But not only is Mei my favorite of the Overwatch cast, but I think she has the most to offer Smash Bros. Of anyone on this list. First, Mei can make use of two different mechanics from the Ice Climbers for players who don't want to have to deal with the Tether AI system. The first, and obvious one, is Ice Attacks. While Frostbite isn't a proper mechanic in Smash like it is in Overwatch, getting frozen after enough damage is taken is. And hey, if Mei adds Frostbite, i.e. slowing down when taking enough ice damage to Smash, then the Ice Climbers can receive that benefit too. Plus, Frost attacks would be far more common on her than the Ice Climbers and Crystal combined. The lesser-known mechanic that she can use from the duo is Traction. The Ice Climbers are immune to any slick surface, most predominantly ice, as well as that UFO from Foresight. So giving Mei that same effect would be a nice attention to detail, and it could give her an edge if she has any moves that freeze the ground, though neither her nor the Ice Climbers would be affected by such a move. That goes to another one of Mei's appeals, flexibility. First, Mei's heftier build lets her use some of the moves from heavy characters without having to be a heavy fighter, like Ganondorf's kick or the football tackle a couple of characters get. Mei's in-game abilities from Overwatch would carry over pretty easily into Smash as well. Her Ice Wall special could be scaled back to an Ice Pillar, and can have the ability to attack it and send it moving forward, with the pillar shrinking as the friction of it sliding melts it. And her ultimate can easily be her final smash. The little drone, Snowball, creates a vertical snowstorm, and throwing opponents into it has them take damage over time. If their damage hits 100%, they freeze solid as if the Spycicle backstabbed them. Snowball then slams into the ground, sending opponents flying and shattering anyone who got frozen. And finally, the Endothermic Blaster is a broad enough concept for a weapon to make new attacks for Smash Bros. Her up special could be like Greninja's, with Mei putting the blaster to her shoes and riding up a blast of cold air. Or it could be a special tether move by her sending Snowball up and then using her gun to somehow pull herself to it. And her neutral special has several options: a wide-reaching but shrinking stream of air, a non-flinching blast of air that she can move while using, a chargeable burst of lingering frost, so on and so forth. I could continue, but you get the idea. The only character who could really step on her groove is Sub-Zero, and frankly, both of them would still play very differently. Now, as I promised, here are some of the characters I left off the list and why. I imagine Shantae is the most glaring omission for most of you, as she's easily one of the most requested fighters. And that's actually why I left her off. She's just that heavily requested. Enough so that she had a Mii Fighter costume without a tie-in fighter, like how Tifa's Mii Fighter costume along with the other party members went alongside Sephiroth. And after King K. Rool started as a Mii Fighter costume and became playable in the next installment, I'm willing to hedge my bets that a similar fate is in store for Shantae should a new Smash game come out. Hat Kid. I really wanted her in Smash Ultimate, but I think the hype train for her has left for me, and I doubt I'm alone there. I would still like Hat Kid in Smash, especially for the Hat in Time OST, but there are fighters with stronger movesets I'd like to see, and franchises with more to offer. Toadette. Many people say she'd be a great Echo fighter for Toad, and I fully agree, but Toad isn't in Smash, and so speculating on any differences they would have would require a moveset for Toad, not Toadette. So I'd have to make a moveset for Toad, which would be what that section would actually be about, which would really defeat the purpose of the list. Miss Pac-Man is stuck in legal hell at the moment, as the company that currently owns her is refusing to let others use her unless they get exclusive rights to use Pac-Man for plug-and-play consoles. So until Bandai Namco works something out or creates a suitable replacement for her, she is simply locked away from any real use. Ashley from WarioWare is another popular request, and while her personality is entertaining, she doesn't have much moveset-wise beyond the concept of a witch. And at that point, Kamek would just be a better choice, who has more concise elements to reference, while still being open enough for unique ideas for Smash. Plus, the Yoshi series can finally get a second character and a proper villain. Shez from Fire Emblem Hopes 3-on-3 was part of the original list. As their personality in the game was fascinating, being a mercenary who is both for-profit but still honor-bound was a welcome change in pace, both for the Avatar character and just the lords of the series in general. But there's already a video that covered them joining Smash and had far more concrete ideas and interest in the character than I did, so they got dropped when I wanted to even the list out to 20. Lara Croft was considered, but simply left out in favor of Jill Valentine. Finally, and most shamelessly, Nina from Tekken. Kazuya soured me on the gameplay concept for Tekken characters in Smash, in case the Talum section didn't make that clear. And so, to end this video off with the only way that's appropriate for me, allow me to break this down into a tier list of the characters. 4 tiers, 5 characters per tier, meant to show how badly I really want them. S tier consists of ChunLi, Anna, Tifa, Linkle, and Mei. These would be my 5 go-to choices if it really came down to it. A tier starts off with Sakura, who I'd honestly bundle with ChunLi, but I think that would only happen if ChunLi made it to the base game. The rest of the tier would consist of Jill, the Octoling, Suzie, and Kasumi. Characters I really want, but I could live without. B tier has Talum, who honestly I probably want more than Octoling and Suzie, but I just couldn't justify myself putting her that high. Blaze would also be in this tier just because I'm not confident in her odds of ever actually making it. The rest of the tier is Mona, Crystal, and Sammy. C tier, the final and lowest tier, goes to the characters I just didn't have any strong ideas for. Tron Bon, Cooking Mama, Twintel, and Mai. I still want these characters, some of them a lot, but it's fair to acknowledge that I didn't have any ideas for them, so I'm not the best guy to be front-running for their inclusion. And finally, Britney. As much as I like the character and the idea of using rock Pikmin for a variant of Olimar, I can imagine it being considered a complete downgrade due to the inability to follow up on hits unless they can bury the enemy, which then turns Britney into a very annoying and possibly overpowered character. And thus, this video can conclude properly. It was fun to step back and take a look at some less obvious choices for Smash. I might revisit this idea in the future, as I have a master list of my most requested Smash fighters, complete with classic mode routes, a set of special moves, music, stages, all of the Smash fixins aside from aerials. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd be interested in seeing more Smash videos. This is predominantly a Dead Rising channel, but I wouldn't mind mixing it up some more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go add a few characters from this list to that master list of mine.